Hello everyone, this is part 13 of What If Deku Was the Chainsaw Man, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Loose floorboards release mellow creaks in tune to each of her steps, every press hitting like keystrokes on a grounded nightingale piano. Himiko surveys the bar with a skewered slant of her eyes. Brick walls box in a collection of booths and bottles stocked on shelves, a counter cutting the room in half at its center. Above her lazily spins a ceiling fan. The place is charmingly quaint, no doubt themed to fit the attire of the bartender that's cloaked in purple fog. He acknowledges her entrance with a small nod as he polishes a wine glass, a very formal and courteous welcoming gesture befitting of such an establishment. It's not what Himiko expected. Networking with a grimy old guy like the underworld crime broker who brought here and having a goth guy who stapled the sagging skin of his third-degree burned body tag along had lowered her standards for an evil lair this classy. Giran, the aforementioned senior villain informant, is at least refined enough to wear a cute fluffy scarf around his veiny neck. Himiko runs her tongue along her fangs, fantasizing what it'd be like to sink her teeth into the man's jugular. Seeing all of these stocked beverages is making her thirsty, and it's been a while since she gotten her blood fix. Giran folds the hinges of his sunglasses before hanging them from his shirt collar. Despite having arrived in the dead of night, he blinks to adjust his eyes to the room's lighting. I've got another couple of league candidates here to meet you. The intermediary middleman twists a toothpick in his mouth with his tongue as he speaks. They say they're interested in joining your cause. It's easier to see inside than under the pale moonlight that the villain broker has a tooth gap glaring out from the middle of his mouth while he talks. Grimace's secret brother, purple welts stretching his stapled cheeks as he makes a grimace, glances around the bar as though only now seeing his surroundings. I'm not a sympathizer for just anyone. I'm here to join Stain's cause. His hands slide out from the pockets of his Matrix cosplayer overcoat so that he can cross his arms over his chest. Himiko perks up at the mention of Stain. Despite the goth guy's emo attitude, she can relate to wanting to meet the hero killer, especially after watching the recordings of him fighting Izuken. Edgelord continues assessing the bar, shooting a look down the serving station's stool aisle, a glance that Himiko follows with her own gaze. Having gone unnoticed until now, what she supposes is a patron sits at the far end, returning their stare. Being polite, she flashes him a broad grin that bears her pearly whites, and waves in greeting. He squints with red eyes crusted around the edges, probably not so used to seeing a smile so bright. Besides, you don't look like very much of a league to me. Goth guy is one to talk but says anyways, you look rather gross, actually. The patron's scarred lip curls over, but he withholds whatever retort lays dormant in that rotten mouth, opting to instead ignore the rude remark. Exercising every ounce of patience within him, he waves a dismissively lazy hand as though shooing a fly. Kurogiri, a not so surprisingly raspy voice makes the bartender look up from his polishing. Himiko realizes that Kurogiri works for the blue-haired man at the bar counter when he's ordered, "Walk them away. I don't like people with no manners." Freddy Krueger during the dark phase of his teenage years catches on next. He uncrosses his arms and smirks, amused as he looks the now revealed leader of the league up and down. You're the guy in charge here. Himiko checks to see if the dude's fingernails are painted black like his obviously dyed hair when he runs his fingers through the unruly pointed mess. They aren't, but she's positive he wouldn't turn her down if she offered to do them for him. I think I do recognize you as the one who rescued Stain now that I get a good look at your wrinkled ass. Do you even moisturize? The supposed leader of the league hisses with contempt. Do you? Spitting as he seethes through his teeth. Himiko can't help but snicker at the comeback, even if its delivery was a little gross. She giggles more when she sees Giran also appearing humoured by their interaction, hiding the lower half of his face with the fluffiness of his scarf. Goth guy goes back to grimacing, not as amused. Kurogiri heaves out an exasperated sigh, restocking the glass that he's finished cleaning. Let's try and have a civil conversation. The bartender sounds like he's the one who could use a drink the most as he glances between the feuding men. We must have some extent of mutual interest to have come together for this meeting. Giran glances up when Kurogiri looks in his direction next. What's more, if we're being introduced by our common friend here, we can be sure of competent skills from one another at the very least. Scarface keeps glaring at Burnface, but relents. TSK? He grinds the fingernail of his index finger into the bar counter as though that'll grind out his frustrations. Fine, then turns on his stool to face Giran's invited guests. Let's start with introductions. The league leader sucks on his chapped lips before presenting his side of the room. I'm Tomura Shigaraki and this is Kurogiri. Himiko practically vibrates in place as her face tinges red with excitement. She's so giddy now that she finally gets a chance to say something. The bund blonde hops forward, jumping to seize the opportunity she's been given to introduce herself. Call me Himiko Toga. Her skirt sways with her hips as she does a little dance and pose. Her jewel piece signs shine as bright as the return of her fanged grin. It's Goth Guy's turn next, his eye roll making Himiko huff since he clearly doesn't appreciate the effort that she put into her introduction. I go by Dabby right now. His is super stoic by comparison that the judges would vote for a blowout if this were a competition. Though the name choice does make Himiko raise her eyebrows, whatever she was expecting, it certainly wasn't that. No good, Shigaraki doesn't like it either if his sneer is anything to go by. He points his index finger at Dabby, wagging it up and down. I want to know your real name. His red eyes meet the man's blue gaze for an intense staring match. Himiko looks between the two of them, expecting them to start making out if neither one blinks anytime soon. The tension in the room is so thick that it could be cut with a knife, and Himiko would really like that. She puffs out her cheeks and puckers her lips. Now ISS. Dabby pedals back, swiveling his head to look at her with wide eyes, his glare broken. Shigaraki is just as baffled, reeling in his neck with disgust. Their reactions make the girl burst out into a fit of giggles. And that's Shigaraki's tipping point. I've had enough of you two, he shoots from his stool with both arms outstretched. Himiko swirls her tongue with a lip smack, still craving a taste for blood, and now able to exploit an opportunity to have some. Dabby rushes forward, blue flames bursting forth from his roasted patches of flesh. Things are really getting heated up now. Himiko brandishes her box cutter, toying with it like a switchblade, then she springs forward to join the boys for some rehousing. Swirly, twirly, spinny splotches obscure Himiko's path. They're making her dizzy. So much so that the dark spots throw off her aim, box cutter stabbing through a purple portal instead of Shigaraki. Dabby's superheated fire is swallowed up and redirected from doing harm as well. Himiko plants her feet, forcing all of her leg strength to acculate for a pushback. She expects Shigaraki's attack to be the only one that lands now. Except, even the grimy groper gets intercepted by the warp gates. His hands pass through holes, appearing underneath them where they grab at nothing but air. I've had enough of all of you, Kurogiri grumbles from behind the bar counter. You'd better behave yourselves. Even though the bartender has no apparent tangible face beneath all the smog covering his head, he places a hand there as though to massage and smooth out whatever tension. Himiko retracts her arm from the portal that stopped her before it closes with all the others. Start over if you must. There's no reason to start over. I already told you why I'm here. I came to see Stain. Dabby emits a streak of steam from his burns after the flames die out. Enveloped in a fog of his own making, his shadow is defined by his eyes that glow as radiantly blue as his fire did. Hissing with heat, the villain s his head in search of his kindred spirit. Where is he? Shigaraki tilts his head at an opposite angle, cyan mop of greasy hair hanging to one side as he does so. Saggy skin around his eyes and mouth twist in an upturned expression, a simper playing at his features. Getting a makeover, the man who is in much need of one himself has a tickled tone as he returns to sitting at the bar's serving station. Kurogiri slides Shigaraki a shot of whiskey, the villain snatching the glass and swallowing it down in one swig. Chapped lips moistened, he seems more at ease now as he says, Stain serves under me. If you want to join him, then you'll join me. Himiko turns the box cutter in her hand left to right, weighing her options. When she makes her decision, she pops its razor back into its compartment. I don't really care so long as I get to see Izuku again, she shrugs before plopping herself down onto one of the comfy cushioned booths of the bar. It feels good to stretch out her legs across the seat, her back arching as she shows more feline qualities than just her eyes. Shigaraki and Dabby ignore her, still too fixated on each other to pay the girl any mind. Dabby shifts to the side, caught between heading for the door from which he arrived or aligning himself with the league. Ultimately, Even if his choice comes with a resigned sigh, he decides to share a stool with Shigaraki at the bar. He waves for Kurogiri to pour him a glass of scotch. We're working towards creating a future without heroes regardless, so I'll play nice for now. Create? Shigaraki scoffs while grabbing his own glass. He downs his second shot before slamming the cup on the counter. All 5 of his fingers curl over to grip it tighter. We're going to destroy the future. A decompositional decay turns what he touches to ash. Izuku hits the ground, crashing like he'd say his future has. He has to reverse his roll with the fall to avoid being pierced by a volley of sharpened plumage. Sweat shines with a gleaming spin of rotating chains, each of the boys' arm bars bracing against the impact of the floor. Hawks has been taking it easy on him, pointed feathers flying past him at a rate he can manage. Yet, the training still pushes him to his limits. He never manages to get in close enough, despite the hero wearing quirk dampening weights on his wrists and ankles. Refine your chain control, the boy's mentor repeats what he said at least 1,000 times already. Refine, 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 the parroted advice is starting to get on Izuku's nerves. Unsheathing from their slots, the chains spin loose to lash out. He whips the untethered fetters with his arms. They twist like tails with minds of their own, only moving in a vague direction depending on where he aims them. Izuku already knows what Hawks will say before it's said. You have to refine your control over them. I know, Izuku grinds out his response through a bite of frustration. It's not the same as grappling a larger mobile object like a building though. Nor does he have the benefit of an enclosed environment such as an alley. The massive space of the training room leaves only him and Hawks, the hero flying circles around him. He tugs down, a snap back of the chains returning them to their soaring systems. It's better that he starts over when Hawks gets so far out from him. Izuku flips over a flurry of feathers. Carried by the motion of his momentum, he releases his chains again so that they fly faster. Hawks flaps his wings to move back. His mentor makes dodging his attacks look so effortless. It continues to grate against the boy's nerves that he isn't pulling this off any better with each of his attempts to snare the bird. Unraveling farther out only limits the extent of his prowess with his chains. He has to keep reeling them back in like a line without a hook. Izuku leaves himself vulnerable during the process of reconnecting the fetters. Saws without blades to slash or whip expose his body to a blunt collision from Hawks. The hero barrels into him, sending him head under legs in a full spiral flip. Izuku exhausts the remainder of his energy storage when he slams into the ground, wind knocked completely out of the boy. Despite his struggles to sit up, there's no standing on his feet anymore. He lets himself slump a bit, chainsaws retracting and his face returning to its usual freckled form. It's no use, Izuku hangs his head in defeat. He stares down at his hands, folding his fingers over so that they make a set of fists. The two disconnected from me, the missing chain links and saw bars could still be there and he'd still feel numb. Kid, come on, don't just give up. Hawks slowly descends to a decent distance to talk, but never stops hovering. He gestures for his protege to raise his head. Hawks waits until the boy does before offering an encouraging smile. Izuku sighs. While he'll humor the hero by lifting his chin up, he still won't force himself back onto his feet for another round of hellish training. Not when the end result is pointlessly nothing. Why are you so dead set on this whole chain controlling shtick anyway? He instead leans back to prop himself at an angle with his arms as a sturdy support. Hawks places his hands on his hips. Innovativeness with one's quirk is important within our line of work. It seems like Izuku's mentor is actually about to drop some heavy knowledgeable stuff on him. That is, until he admits with a slight chuckle, plus, this is all I know how to teach you. Izuku raises his eyebrows, his stare becoming more and more skeptical. All you've been teaching me is how to fall on my ass, and his current demeanor sitting on his sweat-soaked butt is plenty proof to back his remark. Better than your head, but Hawks is ready with his own witty retort. The hero's smile stretches into a toothy grin that's more goofy than aloof. Izuku doesn't smile back. He fixes his mentor with a glare. Being forced into this, he'd at least expected something in return. Leaving behind his friends and UA, he had hoped a hero of Hawk's stature would teach him how to be better. It's pretty bad training when a student is willing to say they'd rather be taught by Aizawa. Hawks sees how intense the kid is, so he loses his grin and gets serious too. Alright, The hero drops down to sit across from his protege. How do you think I'm able to control my feathers? Quirk analysis used to be a huge hobby of Izuku's. He spent a lot of time theorizing hows or whats. Occasionally, he bothered to question the whys. It takes him a moment to recall what he had written down in some of his quirk analysis journals for Hawks. I dunno, telepathically, his answer is more of a question of its own. Hawks slaps a knee as he laughs, ha. Not exactly, but that's a good guess. After he gets his giggles out, he reaches behind himself to pluck a feather from one of his wings. Here, the hero offers it to his protege. When he sees Izuku being hesitant, he shakes it to usher the boy, go on. Izuku takes the single feather, gripping it by the quill. It sways with the transfer of touch. What am I supposed to do with this? He raises it to his eye level in an attempt to inspect it closer. Hawks shrugs, vaguely gesturing with his hands. Play with it a bit, and his suggestion is no better at being anything other than whimsical. Play. Izuku looks up at his mentor as he deadpans. The look he gets back though, it's a sudden shift in expression that takes him by surprise, making him reconsider. Feathers are typically light, but mine can be pretty considerably strong. Hawks fans his feathers with a slight flap of his wings. The plumage ruffles, raw red standing on end as they sharpen into a point. The solid stone switch from softness reminds Izuku of Kirishima's quirk. One feather can carry a person, ya know, and he can feel the durability in the feather that he's holding. One tap of his thumb against the quill is enough to draw blood like a finger prick. But I'm not limited to just one when I'm controlling them. I can carry multiple loads at once. The range of this power strikes a chord in Izuku that makes him look at Hawks with admiration. That must take a lot of focus. Izuku strokes the vein of the feather to feel its flexibility. Playing with it doesn't seem like such a bad idea anymore, the malleable material making for a fascinating thing to study. Hawks scratches behind his ear, chuckling. Kinda hard for anyone to have that much focus, let alone during a fight, and especially when you're referring to me. He makes it clear that he's not selling himself short while he says this by maintaining that serious expression he doesn't typically wear on his face. Izuku blinks back his surprise before guessing, so. Spatial awareness then. Not quite. Hawks shakes his head. He lifts a finger to twitch in unison with what he explains next about his quirk. My feathers are sensitive as they are strong, allowing me to feel vibrations in the air during reconnaissance. Izuku s his head to the side, mulling that information over as though it carries a lot of weight. Like echolocation, the best example he can come up with is how a bug may use its antennae or a bat its cries. Sure, Hawks doesn't really dwell on the matter to determine whether or not that's exactly what he means though. My point is, it takes that connection to have that kinda control. He instead redirects Izuku's focus onto his own quirk. Izuku nods as he stares down at his arms, imagining the chains that tread from him occasionally. Right, the durability changes depending on your preference. He compares his chainsaws to his mentor's feathers and finally starts to find a way to understand Hawk's lesson. Like flexing a muscle, Hawks bends his arm for emphasis. His wings stretch to their full span next, reiterating what the hero means. Izuku's eyes nearly bulge out of their sockets as he takes in the sight. I've been thinking of my chains as tools instead of extensions of myself. It all begins clicking in place like puzzle pieces snapping together within his mind. He'd be generating steam from overclocking his brain if it hadn't already been blown to the point that his head emits smoke. Hawks laughs when he sees that he finally got through to his protege. Give my way a go next time and see if the results are any different. He ruffles the boy's hair a bit and then stands up to get things moving again. Worth a shot, right? Izuku smiles, nodding at Hawks with an enthusiastic hum. He hops up to his feet now that he's full of a rejuvenated vigor. A thrumming in his chest gets him excited to use his quirk again. This time, it'll be a different turnout, he can tell. They're about to commence another bout of training when the room's metallic doors slide open. Heels clack against the floor's surface as a familiar lady enters. Her usual apparel of a matching tie and blazer sway with her hips during her strut. Miss Makima, Hawks greets his superior with a bow to convey his respect. Izuku takes a second longer, hesitating, but begrudgingly matches the gesture nevertheless. As you were, Makima waves her hand as though to pardon them. Her golden gaze watches them return to form, a smile playing at her lips. It appears you've become well acquainted with our facilities. The HPSC director shifts that stare onto Izuku solely and smiles wider. glad to see that you're settling in. Izuku shrugs. He doesn't have much to say. Well, he has a few words for her, but his mom taught him that he shouldn't speak if he has nothing nice to say. Hawks shares a look with the boy, getting the gist of that, and the two communicate silently through the glance then to decide he'll talk for the both of them. Hawks clears his throat to move Makima's attention to him. Is there a reason for disrupting our training session but trails off on purpose to make it seem like a casual interjection. There's nothing like practical experience to raise up the next generation. Makima folds her arms behind her back as she announces, Midoriya's first mission has just come in. What? Both Hawks and Izuku can't contain their shock. But I just got here. Izuku gestures wildly around the room they're in before seeking help from Hawks with another glance in the hero's direction. I agree with the kid on this one. Hawks comes to the boy's aid by quite literally stepping in between him and the crimson-haired woman. It's much too soon to be throwing him into anything. Makima's smile vanishes. Are you disobeying my orders? Izuku can't see her glare from behind Hawks' back. Not until his mentor steps aside to make way for her. Then she's smiling again. Izuku looks at Hawks, searching for support, but he's hung his head low to hide his eyes. It's just he and the woman across from him. Makima steps closer, looming over the boy. Are you forgetting? You're in my care now, Midoriya. I expect, yes, or, woof, for answers. I don't need a dog that says no. Izuku can feel his chest churning internally. If his chainsaws were out, they would be growling. Instead, all the boy can manage is the grinding of his teeth gritted together. I'm not a dog, he forces out a bitter bite while withholding the rest of his anger with clenched fists. But that subsides when a gentle hand lands on his shoulder. Hawks returns to Izuku's side, shaking his head. Easy does it, he gives the boy a slight squeeze before sighing. We report to the director, so unfortunately, what she says goes. Don't fret, Makima moves aside for them to follow her when she begins walking out of the training room. Midoriya won't be alone on this mission. Hawks gives Izuku a push so that he knows to trail behind her. I'll be joining him. The hero's hopeful tone makes Makima glance back at them. No, and she smiles that damnable upturn of her mouth again. This mission will be headed by another agency. Suddenly, something sprouts up from the floor. Izuku jumps back, surprised to see a human passing through the ground. The person would be a spitting image of a younger All Might if not for the uniform's white color scheme and yellow visor. Just as boisterous and enthusiastic as the symbol of peace can be, the muscular blonde grins ear to ear while chanting. The future rules. The future rules. What? Izuku blanches at the weird dance he's witnessing. Makima remains unfazed, still looking back. It's something Sir Naiteye may like to hear you say when you meet him. Despite the long length of the council board, an extensive line of chairs strewn along each end of the table, only 5 people are in attendance. At either end, 2 of which are seated, the representatives of whichever head faces the other. Aluminum blinds conceal their meeting by blacking out the broad window opposing their placement within the room. Sir Naiteye, one of the heads, adjusts his glasses when some sunlight slips through the seams of the window screen. Makima sits across from him with Hawks and Izuku occupying her right side. Meanwhile, the guy that had phased through the floor earlier shares Naiteye's side of the room. Naiteye crosses his arms at the wrists, hands combing over each other. It goes without saying that everything discussed here won't be shared with anyone outside of this room. He adds to the serious demeanor by leaning forward as though to slightly invade some of the large space between he and the others. It's not like I have anyone to tell if I were even allowed to leave the building. Izuku grumbles his snarky comment just low enough that it goes unnoticed by most. Hawks, however, is well within earshot. The boy's mentor prods his protege with an elbow, a subtle gesture to tell Izuku, behave yourself. Heroes can always rely on the HPSC. Makima matches Naiteye's triangular formation with her own arms. Except that hers is much more relaxed, her chin resting atop her knuckles as she leans her head forward rather than her body. Besides, secrets are our speciality. The woman shows a sly smile that makes it difficult for anyone to read whether she's joking or not. Naiteye hums, humored nonetheless. Then we have that in common at the very least. He delivers his own stoic statement. The blonde boy with him stifles a laugh. Naiteye leans back, uncrossing his arms, and sets his hands upon the elongated desk. Shall we lay it all out on the table then? May as well. Hawks shares a look with Makima, who nods to convey her agreement. Izuku swallows down whatever words he could say and nods as well. Naitei takes this as a sign of good faith, shooting a glance towards the blonde boy for one final confirmation, and then fully committing to the gathered arrangement. Bubble girl, he signals for his secretary to enter the room momentarily. When she does, he has her pass out manila folders. Izuku notes that all of the files are stuffed with doents. These are summarizations of all that we gathered. The boy can only imagine what a detailed report would look like. What is it that you've gathered? Hawks sneaks a peek into his own folder before glancing up to address everyone with a joke to lighten the mood, for those of us who prefer picture books or manga rather than novels. The blonde boy chuckles, laughing at every single quip anybody makes apparently. Izuku rolls his eyes. For the past 2 weeks, the Naitei agency has been conducting an investigation of the designated villain group known as Shi Hasaikai. Naitei begins breaking down the contents of the folders that have been handed out. Izuku peels open the cover of his own file to see all sorts of villain bios first and foremost. It's to our knowledge that their organization's leader has fallen ill and the new young head Kai Chisaki is in line to take over. Naitei covers the main 2 profiles first. They're a pretty nasty bunch. The heroes +1 chimes in to regard the other members of the villain group. Regarded as the 8 bullets, or the precepts of death, it seems Chisaki already has underlings beneath his own boss underlings. The commission has been aware of the Yakuza's activities here in Japan for a while now. Makima slides her personal file aside with a dismissive sidelong stare. Without even bothering to open the folder, the HPSC director disregards its contents. Though they tend to fall under the radar, opting to operate in the cracks and crevices left behind from other villain groups rather than join the front lines, the woman has her own refined report of the organization anyways. Yes, well, the fights that create those cracks could get a little broader. Naitei insists on sharing his agency's records though. He refers to his own collection of doents to present his findings. Chisaki may be more willing to rear the Yakuza's ugly head. Hawks snaps his fingers, catching on to the meaning of it all. Ah, so that's what this is about. You wanna nip them in the bud before it's too late. He hasn't really looked through the folder either, but he's at least paying attention. Precisely, Naitei nods. Izuku flips through his folder, the only one still reading at this point. His eyes widen when he sees what else has been disclosed about the Yakuza. They're already looking to expand their reach, contacting other criminal organizations to expand their empire. And then there's this. Naitei's tagalong speaks up once more to add an even more alarming piece of input. The discount All Might produces a photo of a child, originally assumed to be part of a human trafficking front or similar standard abduction methods. We've discovered this young girl is a part of something bigger planned. Izuku feels dread dredging up. The girl in the picture is covered in bandages. She's also clearly malnourished. He can't even imagine what kind of cruel treatment she's getting. Any idea what? But he still dares to ask anyway. Midoriya, Makima interjects before the boy can get an answer. She bores into him with her symmetrical stare. While you pose a good question, it would be best that you remain silent and simply listen. Her voice is soft-spoken but sounds so heavy that it weighs him down. It's fine. Fortunately, Naitei interposes with an assuring gaze behind his glasses. We haven't gotten that far into the investigation just yet anyways. Hawks closes his eyes, not so enthusiastic about the next epiphany he has, so he refrains from snapping his fingers. That's why you came to us. His sigh is more of an exhale as he reopens his eyes to look towards his superior. Any other authority would decline a suggestion to raid an institution without further evidence. Makima puts it into layman's terms. She rests her cheek against a propped hand, lazily mulling over how to put it in even simpler words. You're seeking a more discreet method of collapsing the Yakuza. Her directness is a sharp statement that makes Naitei sit up straight as though he's just been pricked. The man shifts uncomfortably. He adjusts his tie, smooths down his hair, and slides his glasses up. Naitei's stiff posture slightly slackens as he admits to Makima being correct. Time is of the essence, as it always typically is. Hawks crosses his arms as he gauges the number of people in the room. And that's why you're keeping this secluded to such a small circle, he muses aloud what he's re-evaluated. Makima blinks, slow and hard. Involving a larger network of heroes would become too noticeable. She keeps her eyes on Naitei nevertheless. She considers the man's reasoning for not involving other agencies like Fat Gums or even reaching out to underground heroes like Eraserhead. We'll have to make do with what's on deck. Our agency is merely requesting that you keep this operation low profile to avoid any legal trouble. Naiteye finds himself adjusting the collar of his suit while simultaneously loosening his tie as he nervously fidgets under the woman's gaze. Of course, Makima smiles as she watches the hero squirm. He breathes a sigh of relief when her sights switch to the people by her side. While we can't provide hawks to you, we do have our latest member, and it's their turn to wriggle around in their seats. I was wondering what was with the kid. Naiteye's apprentice glances in the direction as well. He thumbs his bottom lip while looking over Izuku, though I guess I'm not that much older to be talking. Steeling himself, Naiteye sits up a little straighter. This isn't an opportunity for you to field test a child. He hides his eyes behind the glare of his glasses when they meet Makima's stare. Though, the woman bores directly through the glass with her ringed orbs for eyes. Oh, but it is, she sweeps each hand in an equally broad manner of gesture. In exchange for each other's cooperation, I believe this makes for a decent compromise. Naiteye falters. He finds himself staring down at the board table instead of at the other attendees of the meeting. May I ask that we have the room to ourselves? It's a request he regrets as soon as the question leaves his mouth, but he knows this conversation needs to be a one-on-one session if it's now become a negotiation. Very well, Makima shows self-satisfaction with her dismissive nod for everyone else to leave the room. Each of the hero apprentices hesitate to go, but Hawks manages to convince them with a shake of his head that it'd only be more troublesome to stay than helpful. Do you think he's gonna decide not to do the raid now? It's not until they're out in the hallway that Izuku breaks the silence to ask the first of many questions that must be on his mind. Who knows? Hawks shrugs and sighs. He shoves his hands into the pockets of his coat, sulking in a sense, since he knows he likely doesn't have any answers for the other questions his protege might ask. Hawks hopes for a silver lining though, when he offers an assuring smile to the kid. I guess that wouldn't be the worst case scenario, right? It's the boy's turn to shrug and sigh. I dunno, he mirrors his mentor's hands in pockets demeanor. I've changed my mind about being forced into this after seeing that little girl, except, Izuku is clearly more resolute than sullen. She needs saving. He hardens his stare when looking to Hawks. The hero's parted mouth is unable to muster any words, a choked noise coming out instead. When his lips come back together, they close into a smile. Good to know this place hasn't numbed you to anything like that yet. It turns out the kid is better at being assuring than he is. Maybe it has in other ways. Izuku looks away as though he's undeserving though. He's now sulking. I thought meeting All Might's old sidekick was gonna be a lot cooler than that. It takes everything in the kid not to look back over his shoulder. Hawks fixes his gaze forward with the boys instead, following the eyeline down a long empty corridor. Part of the business, Hawks can't help but share that same sentiment when considering his own idol and how joining the hero industry can kinda put a damper in things. Still, Izuku isn't an adult like he is. Maybe the childhood phase of hero worship is still somewhat salvageable. Speaking of All Might's old associates though, I've got something to show you if you're up for a trip to the support shop. He tries treading that line carefully to rekindle something. Ha, a support item? Izuku blinks with bewilderment. Sorta. The boy's confused expression makes Hawks laugh. Not really but kinda. He moves his arms about to convey a vaguely odd example of what he means. You'll see. Now you've got me interested. Izuku raises both of his eyebrows while he tries to make heads or tails of his mentor's brief bout of charades. Good. Hawks grins when he hears that he's got the kid hooked. It doesn't hurt to string him along a little more, he figures. We got David Shield to come all the way from my island for this. What? The David Shield? Izuku's jaw falls for the name drop harder than the name dropping. A special commission just for you. Hawks nods along. He can't help but beam a bit, pleased with himself for managing to goad such a reaction out of the kid. Wow, it's even better when he sees Izuku is still breathless just thinking about it. Depending on what happens with the Yakuza and Naiteye, who knows, you just might be able to give it a test run sooner than later. Hawks tops it off by making the silver lining part a little more evident. He hopes he can show Izuku that joining the HPSC has some perks and that it's not all bad. Except, Hawks can't help but feel like whatever Makima has begun orchestrating can only be something bad. Shoe scrapes echo as footfalls dodge blowing scraps of parchment. A duo darkened by brick walls that bow with age cut through the garbage-strewn space of an alleyway. The lead of the couple comes to a halt first, throwing up a hand to signal the other to stop as well. It doesn't take their shared glances at one another to have their next move be a synchronized swivel so that their backs are pressed to the brick behind them. Hitoshi Shinso tries to stifle his heavy breathing by muffling his mouth with the capture cloth he wears around his neck like a scarf. His partner, Shoto Todoroki, can't help but notice an uncanny resemblance between the boy's appearance and their sensei. Todoroki would be inclined to believe Shinso is Aizawa's secret love child if they weren't currently being hunted by the man. Despite this whole thing being a test, mock environment made to mimic an actual city complete with laundry lines hung across the windows above them, it's starting to feel very real. At the start of their final exam's practical portion, the underground hero had been sure to leave a few bruises before Shinso managed to throw down a smoke bomb. The two of them have only managed to get away and avoid Aizawa since then thanks to sheer luck. Todoroki winces, still cradling his side with a self-supportive hand to apply pressure against his wound. Shinso peeks around the alley's corner exit, craning his neck to do so. When he verifies no visual confirmation of Aizawa within their vicinity, he checks back with his partner to signal their next move by giving a curt nod. Todoroki bobs his head back. Following that motion, his hand moves up so that his palm can secrete a frosty mildew from the moisture in the air. That reconfirms that their sensei isn't around them currently. It was an idea they had come up with a while back. Periodically, Todoroki will use either his left or right sides to create ice and fire. Whether or not his quirk functions properly will determine if Aizawa has his eyes on them or not. A way to keep track of Eraserhead's erasure quirk. Despite that, they don't want to risk drawing their teacher's attention. So Shinso makes sure to keep his voice hushed when he says, "I think the escape gate is right up ahead, we should be able to make it undetected at this rate." Todoroki frowns but hums to express his agreement with that plan anyways. They had originally intended to capture Aizawa, but the alternate option for passing the final exam is managing to escape from the mock city. After realizing they may be outmatched against Eraserhead, both boys changed their course of action to escaping as their top priority. Shinso waves to gesture they continue going while they still can. They followed the cable lines strung along electrical poles to this point, imagining the power connection would lead them to the right spot. It turns out that they were right to think that. Shinso leads the rest of the way, Todoroki trailing behind him. Within sight now is the exit. Until, a collection of caltrops clatter across the street between them and the escape gate. Aizawa arrives. He's caught up with them. "I figured I'd find you two here." The underground hero's hair hoists above his head with the activation of his quirk. His capture cloth untangles, landing in his hands as he loops the line like a lasso. Shinso slides to a stop, eyes wide when he sees his mentor opposing him. Todoroki shares a glance with his partner. Aizawa's goggles typically hide who he's staring at to keep them guessing on whose quirk he's erasing. When Todoroki tries creating fire or ice and nothing happens though, it's no longer much of a guessing game. Shinso swallows his saliva to wet his throat before he tries using his quirk instead. "I doubt you're smart enough to have actually figured that out. I'm willing to bet you got lucky instead, just like luck instead of brains was how you got this teacher gig." Aizawa isn't foolish enough to fall for the bait though. He keeps his mouth shut, while also shutting Shinso's. The underground hero's capture cloth loops around before lashing out at an elongated angle, then it wraps itself around the boy's lower face to restrict his speech. Still, Shinso smiles behind the nanofibers. It hadn't been getting his sensei to respond that had been his goal. Rather, he only needed to get Eraserhead to look at him instead of Todoroki. The dual-quirked hero hopeful swings his arm up to unleash a barrage of ice glaciers. Aizawa's head snaps back in the direction of the attack, stopping it short. The ice is already in motion though. He's forced to backtrack and vault out of reach, landing atop a power pole. Fragments of clear crystalline mineral are halted by his erasure quirk long enough for his capture cloth to redirect itself. Streaking straight and then ensnaring Todoroki, that's Shinso's partner captured. But Shinso is free to move again. The underground hero's mentor makes a break for the escape gate. Aizawa sighs, keeping his protege in his peripheral vision as he secures Todoroki. The reason you two were pitted against me is because you're too overly reliant on your quirks. He tosses a couple more caltrops, but this time to keep his catch from escaping? Or rather because you're both also somehow not all that confident about your quirks at the same time. Todoroki could have led with his fire rather than his ice, and Shinso's trick once seen through is a futile effort. It takes a little more than a practical exam to help them overcome their psychological limits apparently. Aizawa is about to jump from his perch to pursue and capture Shinso when he feels something snagging his ankle. He pauses to glance down and see capture cloth made from the same material as his own binding him back. When did? One more quick look in Shinso's direction confirms the boy is without his weaponized scarf. During Todoroki's attack, he must have made a move then. The ice was a diversion. A distraction. Aizawa can't help but smile, pleased with the results of the exam working after all. Not bad, kid. Shinso and Todoroki aren't the only students of Class 1A who have confidence problems. Momo Yaoyorozu and Kyokajiru were paired together to fight the epitome of confidence. Aizawa wonders how the two girls are faring against present Mike. Yamada walks the streets of the mock city in search of his opponents. Every so often, he'll yell at 110 decibels, the same level as a sonic boom, in an effort to draw 'em out. Where are you? His wails rumble through the exam field like thunder that cracks at the shrill shriek of his voice. Even below surface level deep within the tunnels of the city's sewer system, both girls still wince at how loud their teacher is shouting. It was Yaoyorozu's idea that they sneak around out of sight to keep an element of surprise while also increasing the chances of escaping if need be. She just hadn't expected Jiru to still require she create earmuffs from her lipids to ease the strain of her partner's sensitive hearing. That just goes to show how powerful a pro-hero's power can be, even when suppressed by a layer of concrete and quirk dampeners. Nevertheless, with the help of some glow sticks Yaoyorozu continuously creates with her quirk, the girls are able to navigate the underground maze. Not only does it help to see, but it leaves behind a nice trail of breadcrumbs, so that they don't retrace their steps accidentally. The plan is going smoothly so far. And just in case things go south, Yaoyorozu crafted a special EMP device that should theoretically disable present Mike's microphone collar. The only caveat is that it'll likely also deactivate Jiru's bass boosting boots. Yaoyorozu hangs her head, disappointed with herself that she couldn't come up with something better that wouldn't jeopardize her ally. Jiru wades through the sewage a little faster when the duo approach a wall with rungs leading up it. They share a mutual nod before Yaoyorozu regains focus and boosts her partner up. The manhole cover slides away with some effort. Jiru's top knot rises out from below first, followed by the rest of her head. The escape gate isn't anywhere in sight. They'll have to keep going a little further. Jiru makes sure to cover their tracks by sliding the manhole lid back into place on her way down. Yaoyorozu once again chastises herself for not doing something to make this part of the process easier rather than trial and error. Present Mike patrols the surface level none the wiser though. He's also not aware of the motion sensor that detects his movement when he passes the fake coffee shop he was yet to come by. Yaoyorozu's phone pings with a notification to let her know the hero's location. Well, at the very least, they can keep track of their opponent with the traps she sets. They can be sure of how far behind he is or if he's caught onto them. Yaoyorozu allows herself a small smile. She may not have thought of everything. This plan might not be the best one she could come up with. But Jiru's thumbs up is an encouraging sight to see. Maybe this isn't such a bad approach after all. Lost in a similar labyrinth of tunnels, the students of Class 1A aren't the only examinees of the Hero Course Practical. Itsuka Kendo and Obara Shiozaki of Class 1B run like mice caught in a maze. Orchestrating their path from the bird's eye view of a crane, Yuei's principal enjoys the amount of control he has over them. Kendo believes she's the one charting their course, an illusion of free will, but it's Nezu that navigates their actions. Obara follows along, reining in the vines growing from her head rather than stretching them out to seek ahead. It's going all according to what's expected of them play by play. Much like Yaoyorozu of 1A, Kendo shows promise in her critical thinking. However, that also proves to be her downfall. She's quick to jump to conclusions rather than viewing the broad scope of plausibility. Shiozaki similarly judges things by first glance. Nezu figures there's nobody better suited to teaching him the awareness one needs when looking at the bigger picture of a plan. If only they thought things through. If only they took time to stop and reconsider. Maybe then they would pass the exam. Nezu sips his tea, deeming their failure a shame. Are we even heading the right way? Shiozaki flits her gaze left and right as she runs alongside her partner. The mock construction site is fitted with cement tubes tunneling in a variety of directions. It's difficult to keep track of where each one leads when their opponent keeps maneuvering their placement to change with a crane. It's not a matter of where we're going. Kendo grabs Shiozaki by the wrist before pulling back and dragging her to duck down. They fall into a tube opposite to the one they were running for. Are you sure? Shiozaki dusts off her cloths from landing in the dirt. Her hair vines wriggle with a vibrant vigor when she stands back up. I could scout ahead. No. Kendo cuts off her partner with a hushed hiss. A gesture to indicate they both keep their voices low before she whispers a little quieter makes Shiozaki raise her eyebrows. That would make it easier for Principal Nezu to spot us. I thought we were trying to find the escape gate. Shiozaki startles at the implication that she and Kendo are changing their tactics to challenge Nezu. You're too honest that I couldn't risk telling you the actual plan in case he'd find out. Kendo places a hand on her classmate's shoulder in order to apologize. Besides, it's better that Principal Nezu believes he's got us right where he'd like us to be. Shiozaki is even further disturbed by these revelations. The girl she'd elected as class president and considers a friend had not only lied, but the hero school's principal is apparently just as devious. How can you and a cute animal be so sadistic? She shivers just thinking about it. At that, Kendo smirks. You shouldn't be so quick to judge a book by its cover, and then she's sneaking through the retracing of her steps to reach Nezu's crane. A colorful conflagration covers the mock city's streets, flashes of orange to blue fire burning brightly. Heat wafts over asphalt, smoke hissing from cracking cement, streetlights melt while a fake postal box combusts. Windows blast away while surrounding shops burst open, buildings combust within the surrounding area. At the epicenter of this destruction is the one responsible, none other than Katsuki Bakugo. He huffs and puffs through ash and soot, chest heaving with every sharp breath. His palms pulsate as they do more than sting, harsh explosions having damaged the boy's hands. It took a lot out of him to create such a violent detonation. When his opponent is in All Might though, he dare say he has a good reason to let loose. Flames lick a crater clean from where his attack made impact. Not even the nerd's regeneration would be able to recover from this one. Little does Bakugo know the whole purpose of this exam's exercise is to teach him restraint. He'd been put up against All Might for a reason. A powerful quirk led the boy to be forceful and arrogant, choosing fight over flight. When pitted in a battle with someone who outclasses him, he needs to learn there's an alternative option other than jeopardizing his safety. Same goes for the boy's partner, Eijiro Kirishima. A quirk that can withstand critical hits and a manly personality makes him put himself in the line of attack more often than he should. So when All Might comes barreling out of the explosion's wake without so much as a scratch, he doesn't let him off with a warning. He needs to pound it into the thick skulls a bit to teach them a lesson. Kirishima's hardening cracks, even with the number one hero pulling his punches. Quirk dampeners do little to slow the hero's speed when he zooms for Bakugo. The brash blonde lashes out with an explosion to All Might's face, but it may as well be a pie the way the man eats it head on. They never stood a chance. They should have ran for the escape gate. No matter how much firepower Bakugo uses, it won't be enough to stop All Might. The hero left his prime years behind a long time ago, but he's still unstoppable. With a wound on his side, he favors a feint before blowing Bakugo away. The wind uptake isn't like when he fought at the USJ or anything, but it's still enough to send a miniature earthquake across the mock city environment. All Might looks at his folded fist, clenching it a bit tighter. He's running on fumes. He's finally passed his power along to a successor. Yet, it seems this generation of prospective heroes still isn't ready for him to step down. He'll have to hang on a little while longer. He'll have to be enough. The symbol of peace maintains his signature smile, despite playing the role of the villain for this exercise. Kirishima ought to think it's a manly expression, at the very least. Actual villains congregate within an underground base of operations. They don't flaunt their power in broad daylight. Not these kind. These are schemers. What All Might teaches the next generation just may not be enough to stop them. Shigaraki's smile is much more sinister, the thought of destroying everything hero society built making him giddy. Across the way is another legion of evil. The Yakuza. The old gen is conjoining with the new gen of crime. But they each clearly have an aged preference of manners. Chisaki glares at Shigaraki when the villain props his feet up on the coffee table between them. Take your filthy shoes off there. The young Yakuza head-eyes the scuffed sneakers and the way that they track dirt all over the place. That's not a very polite way to treat your guest. Shigaraki scratches at the irritated nerves itching around his frowning face. He returns Chisaki's glower with one of his own. I'm not that generous of a host. The Yakuza is just as restless with his hands as he tugs at the wrists of his gloves. There's a tension between them as they both recognize those patterns. No kidding, Shigaraki scoffs but moves his feet from the coffee table anyways. He'll play along for now. May as well act nice. The latest recruits push his patience enough that this guy is no exception. I was walking for hours to get here. He's already annoyed from having to navigate his way through an underground tunnel system. A precaution we take to elude the heroes, though Chisaki makes a fair point that such a maze would surely make good use with moving under the radar. It's not as cool as hiding in plain sight like the League of Villains bar hideout, but the villain can respect it as a decision. There, we have a common enemy, and a common goal. Shigaraki focuses on the reason why he bothered going through all this trouble in the first place, pushing aside personal feelings for the fellow villain and instead fixating on his hatred for heroes. Yes, we're looking to expand our influence just the same as you after the hero killer boosted attention to our justifiable causes. Chisaki sets his hands on his knees to assume a more relaxed posture when he sees Shigaraki settling in across from him. They reach a mutual understanding, glares shifting gears. That's a nice way of putting it. Shigaraki sneers when thinking of Stain but remembers the benefits he was able to reap from the hero killer. We both have something to gain here. It's best that he moves their discussion topic towards the League in that regard. We're both looking to make big moves with big groups. The question is whether or not those ideals align, but Chisaki is still hanging on to damned motivations. Shigaraki can hear the hero killer spouting bullshit about convictions in the back of his mind. I was thinking we could act together either way. He leans forward to push past those barriers and reiterates that they're after the same goal. You share some power and I'll share some power. Chisaki doesn't react the way Shigaraki expects. He doesn't tense up or anything. Rather, the Yakuza looks bored. It's annoying. Soldiers and funding aren't of short supply for us. He lazily disregards what the League is offering and decides to instead be selfish. What we want in particular from you is your name. Shigaraki has half a thought to dust the bastard. But he calms himself down before he acts impulsively. Sensei spins things in his favor. Maybe he can too. You need some of us as representatives for that, so it's all the same. He's pleased with the way he was able to shift things back in his way of negotiation. And that, especially when Chisaki sits up to show his attentiveness, that's your representative. The Yakuza nods to the being behind Shigaraki. Shigaraki smirks. That's something new. He's glad that the dear doctor was able to finish Katana Man in time for this meeting. When the room shakes, dust rattling off from the ceiling, Shigaraki's smile vanishes. Chisaki doesn't seem all that pleased either. Were you followed here? The Yakuza stands up with an aura of hostility radiating off of him. Katana Man steps forward, a guard dog trained to defend without orders unlike the other Nomu. But Shigaraki stops his pet before things can get dicey. No, Shigaraki dismisses the Yakuza's accusation before also standing up. While he'd typically respond with equal hostility to being threatened, he's starting to think like Sensei that he can use this as an opportunity. However, this presents a good chance for me to show you how useful we can be to your organization should we partner up. Shigaraki waves Katana Man over to him before addressing the bioengineered version of Stain. Let's aid our allies a little. Chisaki watches as the bladed Nomu leaves them, slowly sitting back down. I'll allow this matter to be left in your hands for now, but should this disruption grow out of proportion, I will have to cut our meeting short. Shigaraki plops back down onto the couch behind him, no longer caring to prop his feet up. After he does the Yakuza this favor, he figures they'll have zero qualms about his leisureness either. The only thing being cut short will be the disruption. The villain's red eyes sparkle with malice. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.